The Cybrarian presents Robert E. Howard's Kull, the Conqueror. In the time of Bran Mak Morn, Kings of the Night. Disclaimer. The following may contain violence, references to sex, and language that may offend. Part 1. The Caesar lolled on his ivory throne. His iron legions came to break a king in a land unknown and a race without a name. The Song of Bran. The dagger flashed downward. A sharp cry broke in a gasp. The form on the rough altar twitched convulsively and lay still. The jagged flint edge sawed at the crimson breast, and thin, bony fingers, ghastly dyed, tore out the still, twitching heart. Under matted white brows, sharp eyes gleamed with a ferocious intensity. Beside the slayer, 4 men stood about the crude pile of stones that formed the altar of the god of shadows. One was of medium height, lithely built, scantily clad, whose black hair was confined by a narrow iron band, in the centre of which gleamed a single red jewel. Of the others, 2 were dark like the first, but where he was lithe they were stocky and misshapen, with knotted limbs and tangled hair falling over sloping brows. His face denoted intelligence and implacable will, theirs merely a beast-like ferocity. The 4th man had little in common with the rest. Nearly a head taller, though his hair was black as theirs, his skin was comparatively light, and he was grey-eyed. He eyed the proceedings with little favour, and in truth, Cormac of Connacht was little at ease. The druids of his own Isle of Erin had strange, dark rites of worship, but nothing like this. Dark trees shut in this grim scene, lit by a single torch. Through the branches moaned an eerie night wind. Cormac was alone among men of a strange race, and he had just seen the heart of a man ripped from his still pulsing body. Now the ancient priest, who scarcely looked human, was glaring at the throbbing thing. Cormac shuddered, glancing at him who wore the jewel. Did Bran Mak Morn, king of the Picts, believe that this white-bearded old butcher could foretell events by scanning a bleeding human heart? The dark eyes of the king were inscrutable. There were strange depths to the man that Cormac could not fathom, nor any other man. "The portents are good," exclaimed the priest wildly, speaking more to the 2 chieftains than to Bran. "Here, here, from the pulsing heart of a captive Roman I read. Defeat for the arms of Rome. Triumph for the sons of the heather." The 2 savages murmured beneath their breath, their fierce eyes smouldering. "Go and prepare your clans for battle," said the king, and they lumbered away with the ape-like gait assumed by such stunted giants. Paying no more heed to the priest, who was examining the ghastly ruin on the altar, Bran beckoned to Cormac. The Gael followed him with alacrity. Once out of that grim grove, under the starlight, he breathed more freely. They stood on an eminence, looking out over long, swelling undulations of gently waving heather. Near at hand, a few fires twinkled, their fewness giving scant evidence of the hordes of tribesmen who lay close by. Beyond these were more fires, and beyond these still more, which last marked the camp of Cormac's own men, hard-riding, hard-fighting Gaels, who were of that band which was just beginning to get a foothold on the western coast of Caledonia, the nucleus of what was later to become the Kingdom of Dal Riadea. To the left of these, other fires gleamed, and far away to the south were more fires, mere pinpoints of light. But even at that distance, the Pictish king and his Celtic ally could see that these fires were laid out in regular order.
The fires of the legions,
muttered Bran.
The fires that have lit a path around the world. The men who light those fires have trampled the races under their iron heels. And now, we of the Heather have our backs to the wall. What will fall on the morrow?
Victory for us, says the priest,
answered Cormac. Bran made an impatient gesture.
Moonlight on an ocean. Wind in the fir tops. Do you think that I put faith in such mummery? Or that I enjoy the butchery of a captive legionary? I must hearten my people. It was for Gron and Bakar that I let old Gunnar read the portents. The warriors will fight better. And Gunnar?
Bran laughed.
Gunnar is too old to believe anything. He was a high priest of the shadows, a score of years before I was born. He claims direct descent from that Gunnar who was a wizard in the days of Brule, the spear slayer, who was the first of my line. No man knows how old he is. Sometimes I think he is the original Gunnar himself.
At least,
said a mocking voice, and Cormac started as a dim shape appeared at his side.
At least I have learned that in order to keep the faith and trust of the people, a wise man must appear to be a fool. I know secrets that would blast even your brain, Bran. Should I speak them? But in order that the people may believe in me, I must descend to such things as they think proper magics, and prance and yell and rattle snake skins, and dabble about in human blood and chicken livers.
Cormac looked at the ancient with a new interest. The semi-madness of his appearance had vanished. He was no longer the charlatan, the spell-mumbling shaman. The starlight lent him a dignity which seemed to increase his very height, so that he stood like a white-bearded patriarch.
Bran, your doubt lies there.
The lean arm pointed to the fourth ring of fires.
Aye.
The king nodded gloomily.
Cormac, you know as well as I. Tomorrow's battle hinges upon that circle of fires, with the chariots of the Britons and your own western horsemen. Our success would be certain, but surely the devil himself is in the heart of every Northman. You know how I trapped that band, how they swore to fight for me against Rome, and now that their chief Ragnar is dead, they swear that they will be led only by a king of their own race, else they will break their vow and go over to the Romans. Without them we are doomed, for we cannot change our former plan.
Take heart, Bran,
said Gunnar.
Touch the jewel in your iron crown. Mayhap it will bring you aid.
Bran laughed bitterly. Now you talk as the people think. I am no fool to twist with empty words. What of the gem? It is a strange one, truth, and has brought me luck ere now. But I need now no jewels, but the allegiance of 300 fickle Northmen, who are the only warriors among us, who may stand the charge of the legions on foot.
But the jewel, Bran, the jewel,
persisted Gunnar.
Well, the jewel?
Cried Bran impatiently.
It is older than this world. It was old when Atlantis and Lemuria sank into the sea. It was given to Brule, the spear slayer, first of my line, by the Atlantean Kull, king of Valusia, in the days when the world was young. But shall that profit us now?
Who knows?
Asked the wizard, obliquely.
Time and space exist not. There was no past, and there shall be no future. Now is all. All things that ever were, are, or ever will be, transpire now. Man is forever at the centre of what we call time and space. I have gone into yesterday and tomorrow, and both were as real as today, which is like the dreams of ghosts. But let me sleep and talk with Gunnar. Mayhap he shall aid us.
What means he?
Asked Cormac, with a slight twitching of his shoulders, as the priest strode away in the shadows.
He has ever said that the first Gunnar comes to him in his dreams and talks with him, answered Bran. I have seen him perform deeds that seemed beyond human ken. I know not. I am but an unknown king with an iron crown, trying to lift a race of savages out of the slime into which they have sunk. Let us look to the camps.
As they walked, Cormac wondered, by what strange freak of fate had such a man risen among this race of savages, saviours of a darker, grimmer age? Surely he was an atavism, an original type of the days when the Picts ruled all Europe, before their primitive empire fell before the bronze swords of the Gauls. Cormac knew how Bran, rising by his own efforts from the neglected position of the son of a wolf clan chief, had to an extent united the tribes of the Heather, and now claimed kingship over all Caledon. But his rule was loose, and much remained before the Pictish clans would forget their feuds and present a solid front to foreign foes. On the Battle of the Morrow, the first pitched battle between the Picts under their king and the Romans, hinged the future of the rising Pictish kingdom. Bran and his ally walked through the Pictish camp, where the swart warriors lay sprawled about their small fires, sleeping or gnawing on half-cooked food. Cormac was impressed by their silence. 1,000 men camped here, yet the only sounds were occasional low guttural intonations. The silence of the Stone Age rested in the souls of these men. They were all short, most of them crooked of limb, giant dwarves. Bran Mak Morn was a tall man among them. Only the older men were bearded, and they scantily, but their black hair fell about their eyes so that they peered fiercely from under the tangle. They were barefoot, and clad scantily in wolfskin. Their arms consisted in short barbed swords of iron, heavy black bows, arrows tipped with flint, iron and copper, and stone-headed mallets. Defensive armour they had none, save for a crude shield of hide-covered wood. Many had worked bits of metal into their tangled manes, as a slight protection against sword cuts. Some few sons of long lines of chiefs, were smooth-limbed and lithe like Bran, but in the eyes of all gleamed the unquenchable savagery of the primeval. These men are fully savages, thought Cormac. Worse than the Gauls, Britons, and Germans. Can the old legends be true, that they reigned in a day when strange cities rose, where now the sea rolls? And they survived the flood that washed those gleaming empires under, sinking again into that savagery from which they once had risen. Close to the encampment of the tribesmen were the fires of a group of Britons, members of fierce tribes who lived south of the Roman wall, but who dwelt in the hills and forests to the west, and defied the power of Rome. Powerfully built men they were, with blazing blue eyes and shocks of tousled yellow hair, such men as had thronged the Kentish beaches when Caesar brought the eagles to the Isles. These men, like the Picts, wore no armour, and were clad scantily in coarse-worked cloth and deerskin sandals. They bore small, round bucklers of hard wood, braced with bronze, to be worn on the left arm, and long heavy bronze swords with blunt points. Some had bows, though the Britons were indifferent archers. Their bows were shorter than the Picts, and effective only at close range. But ranged close by the fires were the weapons that made the name Briton a word of terror to Pict, Roman, and Norse raider alike. Within the circle of firelight stood 50 bronze chariots, with long, cruel blades curving out from their sides. One of these blades could dismember half a dozen men at once. Tethered close by, under the vigilant eyes of their guards, grazed the chariots' horses. Big, rangy steeds, swift and powerful.
Would that we had more of them, mused Bran. With 1,000 chariots, and my bowmen, I could drive the legions into the sea. The free British tribes must eventually fall before Rome, said Cormac. It would seem they would rush to join you in war.
Bran made a helpless gesture.
The fickleness of the Celt. They cannot forget old feuds. Our ancient men have told us how they would not even unite against Caesar when the Romans first came. They would not make head against a common foe together. These men came to me because of some dispute with their chief, but I cannot depend on them when they are not actually fighting.
Cormac nodded.
I know. Caesar conquered Gaul by playing one tribe against another. My own people shift and change with the waxing and waning of the tides, but of all Celts, the Cymrae are the most changeable, the least stable. Not many centuries ago, my own Gaelic ancestors wrested Arran from the Cymric Danans, because though they outnumber us, they opposed us as separate tribes, rather than as a nation.
And so these Cymric Britons face Rome, said Bran. These will aid us on the morrow. Further, I cannot say. But how shall I expect loyalty from alien tribes, who am not sure of my own people? Thousands lurk in the hills, holding aloof. I am king in name only. Let me win tomorrow, and they will flock to my standard. If I lose, they will scatter like birds before a cold wind.
A chorus of rough welcome greeted the two leaders as they entered the camp of Cormac's Gaels. 500 in number they were, tall, rangy men, black-haired and grey-eyed mainly, with the bearing of men who lived by war alone. While there was nothing like close discipline among them, there was an air of more system and practical order that existed in the lines of the Picts and Britons. These men were of the last Celtic race to invade the Isles, and their barbaric civilization was of much higher order than that of their Cymric kin. The ancestors of the Gaels had learned the arts of war on the vast plains of Scythia and at the courts of the pharaohs, where they had fought as mercenaries of Egypt, and much of what they learned they brought into Ireland with them. Excelling in metalwork, they were armed, not with clumsy bronze swords, but with high-grade weapons of iron. They were clad in well-woven kilts and leathern sandals. Each wore a light shirt of chain mail, and a visorless helmet, but this was all their defensive armour. Celts, Gaelic, or Brythonic, were prone to judge a man's valour by the amount of armour he wore. The Britons who faced Caesar deemed the Romans cowards because they cased themselves in metal, and many centuries later the Irish clans thought the same of the mail-clad Norman knights of Strongbow. Cormac's warriors were horsemen. They neither knew nor esteemed the use of the bow. They bore the inevitable round metal-braced buckler, dirks, long straight swords and light single-handed axes. Their tethered horses grazed not far away, big-boned animals, not so ponderous as those raised by the Britons, but swifter. Bran's eyes lighted as these two strode through the camp.
These men are keen-beaked birds of war. See how they whet their axes, and jest of the morrow. Would that the raiders in yon camp were as staunch as your men, Cormac. Then I would greet the legions with a laugh when they come up from the south tomorrow.
They were entering the circle of the Northman fires. 300 men sat about gambling, whetting their weapons and drinking deep of the heather ale, furnished them by their Pictish allies. These gazed upon Bran and Cormac with no great friendliness. It was striking to note the difference between them and the Picts and Celts. The difference in their cold eyes, their strong, moody faces, their very bearing. Here was ferocity and savagery, but not of the wild, upbursting fury of the Celt. Here was a fierceness backed by grim determination and stolid stubbornness. The charge of the British clans was terrible, overwhelming. But they had no patience. Let them be balked of immediate victory, and they were likely to lose heart and scatter, or fall back to bickering among themselves. There was the patience of the cold blue north in these seafarers, a lasting determination that would keep them steadfast to the bitter end, once their face was set toward a definite goal. As to personal stature, they were giants, massive yet rangy. That they did not share the ideas of the Celts regarding armour was shown by the fact that they were clad in heavy scale mail shirts that reached below mid-thigh, heavy horned helmets and hardened hide leggings, reinforced, as were their shoes, with plates of iron. Their shields were huge oval affairs of hard wood, hide and brass. As to weapons, they had long iron-headed spears, heavy iron axes and daggers. Some had wide-bladed swords. Cormac scarcely felt at ease with the cold magnetic eyes of these flaxen-haired men fixed upon him. He and they were hereditary foes, even though they did chance to be fighting on the same side at present. But were they? A man came forward, a tall, gaunt warrior on whose scarred, wolfish face the flickering firelight reflected deep shadows. With his wolfskin mantle flung carelessly about his wide shoulders, and the great horns on his helmet adding to his height, he stood there in the swaying shadows, like some half-human thing, a brooding shape of the dark barbarism that was soon to engulf the world.
"Well, Wulfhere," said the Pictish king, "you've drunk the mead of counsel, and have spoken about the fires. What is your decision?"
The Northman's eyes flashed in the gloom.
"Give us a king of our own race to follow. If you wish us to fight for you."
Bran flung out his hands.
"Ask me to drag down the stars to gem your helmets. Will not your comrades follow you?"
"Not against the legions,"
answered Wulfhere, sullenly.
A king led us on the Viking path. A king must lead us against the Romans. And Ragnar is dead.
I am a king, said Bran. Will you fight for me, if I stand at the tip of your fight wedge?
A king of your own race,
said Wulfir, doggedly.
We are all picked men of the north. We fight for none but the king, and the king must lead us against the legions.
Cormac sensed a subtle threat in this repeated phrase.
Here is a Prince of Erin, said Bran. Will you fight for the Westerner?
We fight under no kilt, west or east,
growled the Viking, and a low rumble of approval rose from the onlookers.
It is enough to fight by their side.
The hot Gallic blood rose in Cormac's brain, and he pushed past Bran, his hand on his sword.
How mean you that, pirate?
Before Wulfir could reply, Bran interposed.
Have done. Will you fools throw away the battle before it is fought? By your madness. What of your oath, Wulfir?
We swore it under Ragnar, when he died from a Roman arrow. We were absolved of it. We will only follow a king against the legions.
But your comrades will follow you, against the Heather people, snapped Bran.
Aye.
The Northman's eyes met his brazenly.
Send us a king, or we join the Romans tomorrow.
Bran snarled. In his rage, he dominated the scene, dwarfing the huge men who towered over him.
Traitors! Liars! I hold your lives in my hand. Aye, draw your swords if you will. Cormac, keep your blade in its sheath. These wolves will not bite a king. Wulfir, I spared your lives when I could have taken them. You came to raid the countries of the south, sweeping down from the northern sea in your galleys. You ravaged the coasts, and the smoke of burning villages hung like a cloud over the shores of Caledon. I trapped you all when you were pillaging and burning, with the blood of my people on your hands. I burned your long ships and ambushed you when you followed, with thrice the number of bowmen who burned for your lives hidden in the heathered hills about you. I spared you when we could have shot you down like trapped wolves. Because I spared you, you swore to come and fight for me.
And shall we die, because the Picts fight Rome?
Rumbled a bearded raider.
Your lives are forfeit to me. You came to ravage the south. I did not promise to send you all back to your homes in the north, unharmed and loaded with loot. Your vow was to fight one battle against Rome under my standard. Then I will aid your survivors to build ships, and you may go where you will, with a goodly share of the plunder we take from the legions. Ragnar had kept his oath, but Ragnar died in a skirmish with Roman scouts, and now you, Wulfir the dissension breeder, you stir up your comrades to dishonour themselves by that which a Northman hates, the breaking of the sworn word.
We break no oath,
snarled the Viking, and the king sensed the basic Germanic stubbornness, far harder to combat than the fickleness of the fiery Celts.
Give us a king, neither Pict, Gael nor Briton, and we will die for you. If not, then we will fight tomorrow for the greatest of all kings, the Emperor of Rome.
For a moment, Cormac thought that the Pictish king, in his black rage, would draw and strike the Northman dead. The concentrated fury that blazed in Bran's dark eyes caused Wulfir to recoil and drop a hand to his belt.
Fool,
said MacMorn, in a low voice that vibrated with passion.
I could sweep you from the earth before the Romans are near enough to hear your death howls. Choose. Fight for me on the morrow, or die tonight under a black cloud of arrows, a red storm of swords, and a dark wave of chariots.
At the mention of the chariots, the only arm of war that had ever broken the Norse shield wall, Wulfir changed expression, but he held his ground.
War be it,
he said doggedly,
or a king to lead us.
The Northman responded with a short, deep roar and a clash of swords on shields. Bran, eyes blazing, was about to speak again when a white shape glided silently into the ring of firelight.
Soft words,
said old Gunnar tranquilly.
King, say no more. Wulfir, you and your fellows will fight for us if you have a king to lead you.
We have sworn.
Then be at ease,
quoth the wizard.
For ere battle joins on the morrow, I will send you such a king as no man on earth has followed for 100,000 years. A king neither Pict, Gael nor Briton, but one to whom the Emperor of Rome is but a village headman.
While they stood, undecided, Gunnar took the arms of Cormac and Bran.
Come. And you, Northman, remember your vow and my promise, which I have never broken. Sleep now, nor think to steal away in the darkness to the Roman camp. For if you escaped our shafts, you would not escape either my curse or the suspicions of the legionaries.
So the three walked away, and Cormac, looking back, saw Wulfir standing by the fire, fingering his golden beard, with a look of puzzled anger on his lean, evil face. The three walked silently through the waving heather, under faraway stars, while the weird night wind whispered ghostly secrets about them.
Ages ago,
said the wizard suddenly,
in the days when the world was young, great lands rose where now the ocean roars. On these lands thronged mighty nations and kingdoms. Greatest of all these was Valusia, land of enchantment. Rome is a village compared to the splendours of the cities of Valusia, and the greatest king was Kull, who came from the land of Atlantis to wrest the crown of Valusia from a degenerate dynasty. The Picts who dwelt in the Isles, which now form the mountain peaks of a strange land upon the western ocean, were allies of Valusia, and the greatest of all the Pictish war chiefs was Brule, the spear slayer, first of the line men call Mak Morn. Kull gave to Brule the jewel which you now wear in your iron crown, O king, after a strange battle in a dim land and down the long ages it has come to us, ever a sign of the Mak Morn, a symbol of former greatness, when at last the sea rose and swallowed Valusia, Atlantis, and Lemuria. Only the Picts survived, and they were scattered and few. Yet they began again the slow climb upward, and though many of the arts of civilization were lost in the Great Flood, yet they progressed. The art of metal working was lost, so they excelled in the working of flint, and they ruled all the new lands flung up by the sea, and now called Europe, until down from the north came younger tribes who had scarce risen from the ape when Valusia reigned in her glory, and who, dwelling in the icy lands about the pole, knew not of the lost splendour of the 7 empires, and little of the flood that had swept away half a world. And still they have come, Aryans, Celts, Germans, swarming down from the great cradle of their race, which lies near the pole. So again was the growth of the Pictish nation checked, and the race hurled into savagery, erased from the earth on the fringe of the world. With our backs to the wall we fight. Here in Caledon is the last stand of a once mighty race, and we change. Our people have mixed with the savages of an elder age, which we drove into the north when we came into the Isles, and now, save for their chieftains such as thou, Bran, a Pict is strange and abhorrent to look upon.
True, true, said the king impatiently. But what has that to do with...
Kull, king of Valusia,
said the wizard imperturbably,
was a barbarian in his age, as thou art in thine, though he ruled a mighty empire by the weight of his sword. Gunnar, friend to Brule, your first ancestor, has been dead 100,000 years as we reckon time. Yet I talked with him a scant hour agone.
You talked with his ghost?
Or he with mine? Did I go back 100,000 years, or did he come forward? If he came to me out of the past, it is not I who talked with a dead man, but he who talked with a man unborn. Past, present, and future are one to a wise man. I talked to Gunnar while he was alive. Likewise was I alive. In a timeless, spaceless land we met, and he told me many things.
The land was growing light with the birth of dawn. The heather waved and bent in long rows before the dawn wind, as bowing in worship of the rising sun.
The jewel in your crown is a magnet that draws down the eons,
said Gunnar.
The sun is rising, and who comes out of the sunrise?
Cormac and the king started. The sun was just lifting a red orb above the eastern hills, and full in the glow, etched boldly against the golden rim, a man suddenly appeared. They had not seen him come. Against the golden birth of day, he loomed colossal, a gigantic god from the dawn of creation. Now, as he strode toward them, the walking host saw him and sent up a sudden shout of wonder.
"Who or what is it?"
exclaimed Bran.
"Let us go to meet him, Bran,"
answered the wizard.
"He is the king Gunnar has sent to save the people of Brule."
Thank you for listening. For updates, follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Images courtesy of Unsplash.com. Audio courtesy of YouTube Audio Library. Links and artist creditation in the description. Please like, comment, share, subscribe, and hit the notification bell.